Hey folks, welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you being here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're taking care of those you love and staying close to those that bring you joy, because that is the best thing you can do for yourself. It's what I do as well. And I'm feeling, given even with the still continuing controversies and doom and gloom of news in America in 2020, I am feeling optimistic. It might be due to the fact that I decided to start watching The Muppet Christmas Carol early this year. I've never talked about this on this podcast, but that's my favorite Christmas movie, and I think the Muppets version is my favorite take on the story of A Christmas Carol. I usually watch it multiple times over the course of the holiday season, and and I usually wait until after Thanksgiving, but this year I decided to start in November, and I have instantly noticed I feel more optimistic and hopeful and in the holiday spirit than I already was. And I'm also excited today because, friends, my guest on the show today is Brendan Kelly. Brendan, you might know, he's the bassist and vocalist in the punk rock band the Lawrence Arms. He also wrote for The Onion and works with the Hard Times. You might also know him for the Twitter account Nihilist Arby's. And I just finished talking with him, and this is a really great episode. And for a lot of the reasons that you might expect, because there's a lot of earnest, sincere discussion about like the feel of. I'm not even describing this right. There's a great discussion about punk rock, the importance of punk rock in the city of Chicago specifically. And then I also asked Brendan, because I've talked to a few musicians about what they see as the of what shows and concerts will look like post pandemic or once there's a vaccine. And the answer Brendan gave me at the end of this interview is unlike one that I was expecting from the guy that runs the Nihilist Arby's account. But I love his band, and this is a wonderful conversation. This is I really enjoyed getting to chat with Brendan. If you're not familiar with his band, the Lawrence Arms, they just put out a new record called Skeleton Coast, which is phenomenal. My favorite album theirs, and how I was introduced to them was the album Apathy and Exhaustion, which was put out on Fat Records back in 2002. And there's a lot of great music talk and like kind of like big thinking kind of stuff. This is one of those kind of conversations where I felt like I grew as a person for having had it. So I'm really excited to get to share this one with you guys. If you are a fan of Brendan or the Lawrence Arms and this is your first time listening to my podcast, thank you. I appreciate that. If you enjoyed this and feel like you know a friend who might be into this as well, we are available wherever you get your podcasts, and I have over 180 episodes that with a lot of different people from the music and comedy scenes. So I feel like there's something you can find and enjoy here. So thank you guys for being here, and let's go to my chat with Brendan Kelly of the Lawrence Arms. Off the bat, I was scrolling through your Twitter feed. That Fugazi Red Hot Chili Peppers tweet, I don't know if the DIY punk rock community is ready to have that realization, but you are right.
Now, so I got a buddy, Matt Marty, who I actually do a podcast with, and he's a younger dude. I mean, he's like 10 years younger than me. 13 years younger than me, and so he's just getting into Fugazi now because it just kind of wasn't like totally as like everywhere when he was a kid, like finding stuff.
Sure.
And like we were sitting there, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds great." And he's like, "This shit kind of sounds like the Red Hot Chili Peppers." And I was like, "Ooh, it does." And then we kept listening, and we were like, "A lot of this shit sounds a lot like the Red Hot Chili Peppers." I mean, very different singer.
Yeah.
But like there's a few more similar, like I said, there's a few more similarities I think anyone would care to admit, which funny.
Yeah, exactly. Like Joe's bass lines, once you get into that kind of like reggae dub influence, like I know it's it's not too far off. Maybe the singer sounds different. Maybe John Frusciante has more of like blues in his playing, but the foundation is pretty similar. I've been thinking lately, as far as like analyzing like music scenes and like the DIY scene in particular. I think initially, at a certain point, what a lot of people are reacting to when they say like, "Oh, this band sucks," or they're reacting to. I feel like a lot of it is they're reacting to all the culture associated with it, because there's only so many power chords, and at a certain point, a band you hate is going to overlap with a band you like, and they're going to have something similar. It's
100%.
strange.
I mean, like there's so many bands like like when I was sort of young touring a long time ago, there were so many bands that were playing that were like I did not think were particularly good, and who haven't really stood the test of time necessarily, but who were very much of the moment, and as a result were like heavily lauded. Whereas, with the exception of the first band I was in, which was called Slapstick, which was a ska band that kind of came up right at the very beginning of when that like punk ska thing was about to break.
Yeah.
Which is in no small reason why we're talking today, because that was enough juice to like kind of give me a little bit of a career. Just that luck of being in the right place at the right time. But with the exception of that, I've never been in a band that was like really very of the moment, and like I can recall like us not having the right culture apparatus around us in order to like fit in with the ideas of what people thought were cool. And it was really, for your listeners out there, like if you believe in what you do, and like what you do is I guess kind of good, and you just do it for 20 years, eventually it'll pay off, I guess.
That's kind of the model that now everybody else has kind of adapted. Like I remember, and it's a scarlet letter to bring up this guy's name now, but when everyone was calling Louis C.K. a genius for self-distributing a $5 special on his own website, as like, oh man, this has never been done. I've been like, dudes, like not only has the punk rock scene been doing that, some version of that for years, but like everybody's been like putting out their own shit for years before that.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a whole fucking there's a whole system on fucking Amazon for you to publish your own book. And like Bandcamp was already a thing that existed at that point. So
yeah,
it's a little disingenuous, but at the same time, there is something. You know what? Honestly, to go back to Fugazi, it's like the idea that Joe was bringing in those sort of like dub bass lines, and Brendan was playing under him with those sort of like really sort of laid back but highly intricate beats. Yeah. It wasn't like that was new. It had just never been done in punk rock. And so that's sort of that's sort of what I find fascinating about all art, right? So to bring that into something as big as like mainstream stand-up, there is a sort of certain visionary aspect of play there that I think is worth noting. But you're absolutely correct. It's not as though it was the first time that that's ever been done.
Right, but you also make a very good point. It's not that it's new, but it's new to the people that are seeing it for the first time, which I think is very important. Like when I first discovered punk rock, and an analogy I make a lot, I compare my punk rock fandom to my coffee fandom. Like I started off with like the sugariest, like sweetest kind of stuff that you hear on the radio, like Blink, Green Day, New Found Glory, and all that stuff. And then I would say like I would say like the Lawrence Arms, and I don't know if you consider these bands your contemporaries, but like Banner Pilot or Dillinger 4 and the other bands from the Midwest. That's like, okay, I'm going to try coffee with no cream or sugar in it. And then eventually once you get down to like Fugazi and like anarcho-vegan punk, that's like a single coffee bean like with a dropper of hot water, and you just drip it on it.
Right. Yeah. And then next thing you know, you're listening to Crudos and just chewing beans. Yeah.
Exactly. I will say though, like Skeleton Coast is a phenomenal record, dude. I really, really enjoyed it. And there's a certain, and I don't know if you feel if you feel this way as well. I feel like the punk rock that comes out of Chicago has like a certain like grit and weight to it compared to the coasts. Again, when I think of bands like Banner Pilot or the Lawrence Arms, I feel like there's like just a lot more like grit and attitude that the Chicago bands have.
Yeah, well, I think there's something that's like, well, the West Coast is obviously it's kind of about like fun and like fucking and like like casual malfeasance or whatever, like you're just like, because that's like what it is in California, like whether like no matter where you are, and then you got the East Coast where it's like it's overcrowded and it fucking like you have to scream to make your voice heard, and there's a lot of hardcore and stuff like that comes out of that, and then there's a lot of like that like sort of like just like oozing cool of New York City, right? Yeah. In the Midwest, it's just like it's fucking snowing, and like we're kind of surrounded by people who don't necessarily share our beliefs all the time, but there is still like a sort of like very like working class egalitarianism, like or sort of like a class egalitarianism where like it's really quite acceptable to work in like the tannery. It's kind of just as interesting as working in the law firm or whatever.
Right.
So but at the same time, there's no sort of government apparatus set up to make those two things have, or cultural apparatus, I guess I should say, set up to make those two things have any sort of equal weight financially or in terms of like how easy it is to live your life. So we, I think that just kind of comes out. There's a more like, it's not like the fucking impotent rage of East Coast hardcore that is just like, I mean, literally one of the most famous East Coast hardcore songs is Screaming at a Wall, and here it's just sort of like, fuck what you're doing, really. Like, I'm just trying to like fucking take the bus home and, get into my like jug of Carlo Rossi when I get there and hope that the heat doesn't go off, and right. So like, I don't know if that's a grittiness or if it's a nihilism or if it's a sort of real like class conscious populism that sort of like ekes through or whatever the fuck it is. But it's like, yeah, it doesn't have anything to do. It has everything to do with the entire like greater punk rock scene. I mean, the first punk rock stuff started on the coast, and like my bands personally owe the huge gratitude to all of those like 924 Gilman bands, right? And the East Coast as well. I mean, bands like Fugazi, a perfect example, or Minor Threat. I mean, these are bands that are like so incredibly important to me, and even some bands that don't have Ian MacKaye in them. But the truth is, like, we kind of heard that shit through the mail, and then it was like, okay, what can we? There's the greatest fucking story, and it's not true, but it's about how ska started, and I can't say this plainly enough. It is not true, but it was what I heard when I was like in a young ska band, and it was like the people in Jamaica were like listening. They were trying to tune into like the fucking, Eastern Seaboard radio stations, right? And like, and they would hear music, but it would like cut out because the radio signal wasn't strong enough to get there, and that's where like
the
yeah, because it's like that's just kind of how it sounded to them. Again, that's not true, but that is the kind of thing that is like the mother of invention, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, when it's just like when you hear fucking NoFX and Bad Religion, even like something as like fucking asinine as like Guttermouth, right? And I do not put those first two bands in that same category, by the way, sure. Just to be clear. And then you hear, Minor Threat and Gorilla Biscuits, and you're like, it's all just punk rock to me. And so you get this amalgam of like this thing where it's like, oh yeah, we party, we're furious. And that's the Midwest also. Like, so
right,
it just
right.
like sort of comes together in this like perfect storm of the sort of vaguely unpopular punk rock that's manifested from the Midwest for a long time.
Right. No, that's a brilliant analysis to it, and I'm really resonating with that idea of that kind of like that working class populism. But it's probably, to me, that's, in my experience, that's the most inclusive, like non-corrupted form of that. Like it's a very like, we're all misfits. If you come in here, we'll all be misfits together, compared to we're misfits and then let's go find somebody to blame for all of our problems. Which is what I've always loved about punk rock.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, the other thing is that it would be like disingenuous of me to like really align too much as like some sort of like working class hero. I mean, I grew up with a single parent. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked at McDonald's. I've fucking hung drywall, like I've done some fucking shitty jobs, but I was never like a fucking hungry kid. I never had to like fucking, like go work at the sheet metal factory or anything like that. Like,
sure,
like my life was, I had teenage jobs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're shitty because who wants to hire a fucking teenager? Because they're terrible at everything.
Exactly.
And so like, just to be clear, before any of your listeners are like, oh, real working class guy here. It's like, well, no,
Yeah, I think
I did that work, but
yeah,
I had the luxury of fucking going on tour when I was 16.
Exactly. Like it sounds like you have a very healthy perspective of your place in life early on. And how long have you been in Chicago? You're originally from St. Louis, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was born in Missouri. I was born in St. Louis, and I lived in Missouri till I was about 10. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to Chicago then, and I'm 44 now, so it's been 34 years I've been here.
Excellent. And do you remember talking about these kind of like lightning bulb moments? Was there a lightning bulb band or moment for you when it came to like, I want to play music and I want to be in a punk band? Or I guess it would be ska initially. Was there a moment like that for you?
Well, no. So okay, first of all, the idea of like playing in a ska band, that was something that like I joined that band because the guys asked me, because they said they needed a singer, and I said, for sure, I'll sing with you guys, because they were like, they had a real good, to quote the old flyers that used to hang in Guitar Center, they had, pro gear and pro attitudes. And so I just joined, and then they're like, yeah, we're doing ska. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And they were like, it's like Operation Ivy. And I was like, oh, I know who that is, but I don't know. I still wasn't like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like dialed in to.
Yeah. I guess yes. That's the fucking. I wasn't sophisticated enough to understand what part of Operation Ivy wasn't just like Minor Threat.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I didn't get that it was like the upstrokes on the guitar, and then the dudes in Slapstick would be like, it's like the upstrokes on the guitar, and I was like, I don't know. And then we started playing, and I understood a little more. But it was Bad Religion, No Control for me, for sure. That like made me be like, I want to do this for a life thing. Mm-hmm. I already was like, I had Unfun by Jawbreaker. I had Minor Threat's discography. I had like Bad Brains. I had the Green Day. I had Fugazi, first 2 albums. God damn it, there's fruit flies in my house. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
But it was when I heard Bad Religion, No Control, and I was like, oh, everything is different now. Like, 22 minutes into pushing play on my little tape deck, I was like, oh, so things will never be the same again. This is what I want to do, for sure.
Yeah.
Because it was just so tough, and it sounded so cool, and it sounded better than, I already had No Effects records. I mean, like, I had a ton of good stuff, but Bold, Burn, I had a lot of that hardcore shit. Youth of Today, but Gorilla Biscuits too. Yeah. But once I heard Bad Religion, I was like, man, these guys are like, they're like smart nerds with, expansive vocabularies like me, but yet they still sound tough. And they're not like letting anyone like kick their ass or like make fun of them. They're like using it as a weapon. And
Exactly. Smart and tough.
and then this guy's like fucking got the best voice of like any singer ever. And it was just like, and then they do like the greatest guitar solos, like the most shredding, ripping guitar solos on that album, and like all the backing vocals that are just like the church choruses and stuff. And I'm like, this sounds cooler than anything I've ever heard on the fucking radio. Yeah, that's it for me, man.
And then did you play guitar first or bass first? Because I kind of fell into playing bass out of necessity. I started on guitar and then I was like, oh well, I could probably just follow the root notes at first.
Yeah, no, I played guitar first, and then I started playing bass a little while after, when I guess my parents moved, or my mom, my stepdad. Like when my mom got married again, we moved out of our apartment to the suburbs, and then so I lost my guitar teacher just due to proximity, and then so I started taking bass lessons because I was just like, I know enough guitar that I can get by, I can write songs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just was maybe self-aware or maybe self-defeating enough to know that I was never going to be a virtuoso on the guitar. So I was like, I might as well like try to learn the bass, switch it up a little.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
So
Yeah. Well, to me, like my favorite, I love like guitar and punk rock, but I'm always listening for like the cool bass lines, or being able to hear the bass on punk rock records, like hearing that precision bass, kind of like mid range, kind of like punch you in the face part of the song. I'm always like, I'm always like very, very, very attracted to that. Okay, so you're in Chicago. You're picking up bass. Did you have an introduction to like a local scene in Chicago? Was the Fireside Bowl around when you were a kid?
Well, yeah, I mean, we played like the third show ever at the Fireside Bowl.
Oh, nice.
Slapstick did. And that was the whole thing, was the dudes in Slapstick, they lived in a town called Elgin, which I moved kind of like out near there. And when I met those guys before, it was when they were in a band and I was in a band from the city. There was a goofy fucking band. I mean, like we did like, some stuff was punk, some stuff was like kind of funky. Some stuff was kind of metally, some stuff was kind of like just like straight radio rock, but we just sort of didn't know. And more to the point, like the way that the sort of like alternative scene, for lack of a better term, in like that sort of I guess late 80s, early 90s worked, that there was not really much of a demarcation between those things. Right? So it seemed kind of normal that like a punk band would play a funk song or like, something like that. And like Sludgeworth, Dan Vapid's band, like while he was in Screeching Weasel, they had a song called Funk Dungeon, man, at that time. And we would just go see Naked Raygun and Sludgeworth would open up. And so like we didn't really know the difference. And I didn't really know what punk was until I met those guys. We played this show with this band Slugbug, who had some members that would go on to be in Slapstick with me. Once I started hanging out with them, after we like sort of hit it off, they turned me on to the whole idea of like what punk rock was, what ska was, what was cool, what was lame, like that whole kind of thing. Because I just didn't know. I mean, I didn't like have an older brother or anything to like. Sort of like shepherd me through and be like, this is cool, this is lame, like, so I was just going to the fucking record store and buying stuff and like sort of like putting it together on my own. And in a lot of ways, I didn't do a very good job, but then I met those guys and they sort of like steered me at least in a direction where I could like wrap my head around what like I knew was supposed to be good or bad, if that makes sense. Whether I agreed or not was a whole other story, but yeah, so that's like sort of where I think that's the answer to your question. I don't remember what the question was.
I mean that I'm hip to. I think that kind of more or less answered my question. Like you find people that are kind of going to be your Sherpas up the your Sherpa tastemakers almost. I relate to that because I'm from about an hour and a half south of DC, like in the middle of nowhere. It's the place where like lobbyists have their like summer homes and stuff. So that's where I'm from. So I was like putting stuff together through like Guitar World magazine or, okay, like reading the liner notes of like, okay, Newfound Glory is thanking all of these bands. Okay, I'll go listen to I'll go check them out.
Oh yeah, I mean that was the only way to do it back in the day. Like you really needed to like that fucking thank you list on Jawbreakers on Fun really made me buy a lot of tapes, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like when I'm 12, I'm not buying that Sam I Am album with the dead flowers on the front of it unless it was the first thing that Jawbreaker said in their thank you notes, you know?
Right.
Like, they're like, thanks to Sam I Am. And I'm like, okay, I will give this a try anyway. You know? And then it turned out, you know, Sam I Am's a great band. But, like, there just was no internet. There was no, like, sort of mechanism to distribute punk rock to kids besides going to live shows. And, you know, to go to live shows when you're really young. I mean, like, I got into it when I was really young. And I don't think that, you know, I could have just gone, like, I couldn't have gone to the Fireside Bowl when I was fucking 12. I mean, first of all, it was a terrible neighborhood. Second of all, they weren't even having shows. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's just, like, not the same thing. But yeah, okay, so your question was what was the scene? So there's this big scene in Elgin, right, that was, like, really robust and sophisticated. And, you know, I started going out there and Slapstick started playing out there. We started gathering an audience really quickly. And the big promoter out there was Brian Peterson, who was a dude who was in a couple of bands and was really good friends with the dudes in Slapstick. I'm sorry, I don't know what the fuck that is. But I live in a city, so
it's totally cool. That's
no choice.
That's what I love about podcasting in New York. You hear like the random siren or like
yeah.
So don't even sweat it.
Cool, but so when Brian noticed that we were like kind of gathering an audience like really quickly, he had found this new place in the city, and he was like, I'd really like you guys to go down there and play. I'm going to do a couple shows to like see how it is, and then I'd like you guys to go down there. And so we went to the Fireside Bowl, and the first show we played, it was still like, it was in a sort of Latin mix neighborhood, right? And there's all the families where they're bowling. And the bands that were playing, I mean, you're talking 92 here, 93.
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of bands that kind of are rocking the same program that I'm talking about, where it's just like, it's hardcore, then it's like a little pop punk, but then it's like kind of metally, and, you know, just, and a lot of them are bad because nobody had ever been to this place. Brian wasn't like exactly like a gatekeeper of like the coolest scene or the coolest bands at that point. And these families would just politely clap after every like minute and a half shitty song, and then go back to bowling. And then, you know, within probably 7 months, no families, just bands, no bowling, just rock and roll.
Just kind of took it over. That's wild, man. Yeah, I remember like in my hometown, like the bands would put on. Talked to a friend of mine from back in high school. Like you were putting on shows in like the like gated communities, like recreational space, or like the local firehouse was another popular one. The National Armory, which was sucked because like little overzealous security guards would like prevent you from having any kind of fun or moving around.
Wow.
And it's like,
yeah, I mean, I do recall like in like, you know, the early days of me doing this, like when we would go on tour, we play a lot of very strange places. We played a storage unit in Cocoa Beach, Florida. It was just open, you know, like it was like in a you store it or whatever. We played. There's a place in Detroit called, I believe it's called 404 Willis, which was just the address, and it was just an abandoned like tenement building where they'd forgotten to turn off the power, and so you play in the lobby. First person that shows up collects the money, and then pays the bands, which worked out really great every time. You know, that's sarcasm. Like that often was just like somebody would show up early and collect all the money and then leave.
Right.
Because there was no like
there's no organization to it.
No structure whatsoever. But yeah. I mean, back in those days, like shit was pretty weird. And I think that's kind of what the Fireside really did, was in a very real way, sort of held down the Midwest in terms of like, because there wasn't such a scene for small bands in the Midwest. I mean, besides VFW halls and stuff like that. But the Midwest, Chicago specifically, is the most important city in America. It's got the best scene in America because everybody from the East Coast, if they're going to go west, they're going to go through Chicago. Everybody from the West Coast, they're going to go east, they're going to go through Chicago.
Right.
So Chicago gets all the bands, you know, and so they finally had a place where all the bands could go. And I think in a real way, it sort of was like inspiration to a lot of people, you know, in the sort of like the neighboring municipalities or whatever, to sort of like click in and try to make a space that was legit.
Right.
And so it's cool. Yeah, Toby, my who does Red Scare with me, he's our manager. He's my personal booking agent, manager, like best bud, whatever. One time somebody was like, "You going to the fest?" And he was like, "The fuck would I go to the fest? I live in Chicago. I'm going to see every single one of those bands on the way down and on the way back." You know? And I was like, "Damn." It's true. I mean, it's ice cold of you to say it like that, but
well, it's very practical, and the other
he's very German.
Yeah, and the other thing I remember also about just finding punk rock is, for me, Behind the Music, when VH1 still did Behind the Music, that was a big deal. That's how I learned that the Goo Goo Dolls used to sound like the Replacements. Back in the 90s, and I just fell in love with like that, like Hold Me Up through like Boy Named Goo era of Goo Goo Dolls. Like, oh my god, they played in standard tuning and had like distortion and stuff.
Oh yeah, the Goo Goo Dolls, Jed, actually, which is the one before Hold Me Up.
Yes,
that was one of like, that record was the record I got. And I was like, I bet I could sing like this dude.
Oh, yeah, because Robbie's the main singer on Jed.
Yeah, and so I kind of like went for it. Then when Hold Me Up came out, I got it like the day it came out. And I heard like laughing. And I sort of like refined the way I was like trying to sing. Because before that, I was kind of singing like Joe from the Dead Milkmen, because that was like my favorite sort of band before that.
Yeah.
And it was terrible sounding. So yeah, that's really where my voice even came from initially. I mean, the thing is, I don't know how, I think it's just luck for me that like I heard that guy, because I don't know how like genuine his voice is and how much it's like an affect. You know, but I think you can hear from me just talking right now that,
yes,
like, my voice is legitimately like
yeah, compared to like Fall Asleep. Yeah, I can totally hear like how you're the singer in the Lawrence Arms. Totally.
Yeah, well, it's like, it's just my voice. Like if I scream, that's what it sounds like. It's just like, I was like, oh, I could do that. That's like how my voice sounds. And I mean, I think at first I like did a little like sort of like affected, like you, like kind of stuff. And then I was like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. Like now I've got like I'm comfortable enough, like just actually belting it out, and like I don't know how much Robbie was like doing it like with really like pitched throat, because it's like there's like a lot of those people out there that do sing like in a similar style to like the way I sing, but I feel like a lot of them really close up their throats. I mean, like with no disrespect, like whether or not it's legit, like I feel like Shevchuk, when I hear him sing, it sounds like he's like like from Kid Dynamite and No More Black, right? And I was always like, you should just like fucking belt it out, man. It's the way to do it. But
yeah, I've always wondered that about like the way Tom DeLonge's voice has changed over the years. Like he used to sing, I feel like he kind of used to sing like all through the nose, like all up here, and then by the time they started getting into the like untitled, like now it's like a meme that like the he's like all vowels on like Angels and Airwaves and like later bird stuff. It's just like howling.
He's got a real he's got a real curated sound. I mean, it doesn't sound like affected to me, but it sounds like very like articulated specifically. And like he also is coming off of being a kid listening to Fat Mike, obviously.
Yeah.
Like
which all I feel like Fat Mike, like all the singing is like very, definitely a lot of, you can feel all of the attitude in the way he sings, which I feel like really makes
Mike is also like, say what you will about Fat Mike. He's a mentor of mine. I respect him very, very much. And for a long time he was like one of my best buds. And when he talks, he's like, "Yeah, what's up, man? How you doing?" So it's like I don't think that it's I don't think his voice is affected whatsoever. Like
that's just how that guy is.
How his voice is.
That actually leads right into what I wanted to ask you next about Lawrence Arm's time on Fat Wreck and working with Fat Mike, because I get the feeling like I can't imagine he's like that all the time. Like when the cameras are off, or the guy I see like I remember him getting like the whole crowd to throw shoes at him at a show once. What is working with Fat Mike in a business sense?
Well, for one thing, I haven't done it in a long time, but I can tell you what it was like, and that's he's one of the smartest fucking guys. He's like almost always the smartest guy in the room, and he is incredibly kind. He's incredibly generous, and also no time for your bullshit if it's not what he's feeling. So like he'll be like, "I'm gonna walk away from this story now. It's not good," shit like that, right? Yeah. But that's not in any way a criticism of him. I actually think it's pretty admirable. I think.
Yeah, I know people like that just have like no time to. No, again, they don't have the time for like
suffering
unnecessary
fools.
Yeah, that's the phrase I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mike, that is Mike, and he's just incredibly smart. His like business acumen is obviously great. And at the time when we were with Fat, he was married to his first wife, Erin, who's also incredibly smart, and like sort of like locked down the books and all that kind of stuff. And just like between the two of them, they had a really good system going on, and they still run the label together, but I don't know what the power dynamics or whatever you want to say over there is now. But Mike had a really good sense of who he needed to surround himself with. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
like there was a day when like one of his like, one of like the higher ups in the label was like, "Yo, what's up?" I'm not gonna name any names.
Oh yeah, totally.
No, because it's funny and it's not really that bad. But it's like, chicken from Dead to Me. It's like he just fucks around and plays ping pong all day, and like I'm up here busting my ass. This is bullshit. Mike's like, dude, some people like to work hard, some people like to fuck off. There needs to be jobs for everybody. And I think that that's a really enlightened point of view for the guy that's actually writing the checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I think Mike's the best, man. I think he's my experience with Mike was very positive, and we became very close friends for a really long time when I was at that label.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of lost touch a little bit, but
I read that. Yeah, I feel the same way about stand up. Like, because I was in the trenches for years with a certain group of comics, and then there's people that like quit or they go off and they start doing something else, and then there's the few people that go and they're super successful, and you're just like, holy shit. So yeah, it's kind of a cruel. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've realized how like shrinking my social circle has come. I'm lucky that my wife's awesome and I like spending time with her, but I feel like I had this like really like a ton of friends, and now I know like 3 people.
yeah. I mean, well, now especially in a pandemic, it's like,
oh yeah,
I see. Like I fucking, not to make it morbid, I just put down my dog, and so that's
yeah, I saw that. I'm sorry,
it's basically a fifth of the main people I hang out with. They're just gone. Just right there.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, like in the sort of, there's a reason your parents don't have any friends, like that they go over for like game night once a month to the neighbor's house, and it's like, but there's not like, they're not calling the neighbors, they're not going out to dinner with them or anything, like,
yeah.
It's just like, when you're young, okay, so like to go back to like the whole thing with like funk and metal and punk and all that, it's like when you're young, you're like, I don't know, all this stuff could be cool. I'd like to collect it all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with friends and people. And then as you get older, you're like, oh no, this is bullshit. Nope, not into that. Oh, that person doesn't like me. Okay, and okay, like fuck these two, and you just kind of whittle it down, and then next thing you know, you're like, I'm into bird watching, and I like my wife.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for personal development, that's kind of healthy to like cut out people that don't like you or are bad for you. It makes it harder from like I think from from a show business perspective to like get yourself into somebody's routine. But another thing I wanted to ask you, because as I said in my message, I was really apathy and exhaustion. I was listening to that a lot when I was like getting up at 4 a.m. to go to work at Starbucks and then do open mics till 1 o'clock. I wanted to ask you specifically about that record, because I had heard that Fat Mike like put you like right back in the studio after a lot of very exhaustive touring, and that's kind of where you were mentally at the time. I was wondering if that's correct or not.
Well, man, it's not correct, because Mike never forced us to do anything. What is true is that we were touring like crazy, and it was like when Mike called us, he's like, hey, I want to sign your band. I'll give you a lot of money, and we were like, holy shit, this is it. Our ship's come in or whatever. And, it's like, now, I'm going to hook you up, and, you can, whatever. It's just like, that wasn't even, he didn't say that. I'm putting words in his mouth. I apologize. It was all of a sudden we were going to be the new band of Fat Records. And like, also like the first like non, doo-da-bop, 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 right? Like the first non-band like that. So it was like, it was like this whole thing. And then all of a sudden we had all this juice. We had European booking agents. We had our booking agent that we are still with to this day, had like more juice, I guess, to like get us on better tours or to do stuff. So all of a sudden we're off to the races and we're just like touring like crazy. And we had some songs and we were writing more songs and all that. And then we got back and we went into the studio to record, but it was not like under Mike's like fucking crack of his whip or anything.
Oh yeah, I might have I misphrased the way I characterized that, so I apologize to Mike if you listen
to this. We were fairly exhausted at that point, but it was like that kind of like refreshing exhaustion, like after you're like done with like a good run, or like after you just like had great intercourse in the fucking truck stop bathroom or whatever
it's the exhaustion that comes with accomplishment. It's like I did that. Yeah.
And so it wasn't a negative thing, but it was definitely like, I'll tell you right now, I wouldn't enjoy that shit at all. But
today, yeah,
but I'm very old and weak now. Yeah. So
well, if I can say anything, I do not think the quality of your music based on your place in life has changed. I love the early stuff, and I love the newest Lawrence Arms record as well, man. So I feel like you guys are still continuing to crush it, and I will continue to enjoy your music probably for forever, I would think. How did you end up working for The Onion?
Well, so I used to work at an ad agency, and to make a long story very short, some of the things I saw there inspired me to start like this like sort of parody account of social media called Nihilist Arby's.
Yes, I love that account. It's hilarious.
Thank you. And I started it, and it exploded and became like very, very popular, and was like all of a sudden like on the cover of the LA Times, and like there's people like there was a front page article, I want to say, in like the Washington Post or something, where it was like a quote from a senator, and then it said like, it's like, well, essentially it was like, we're all fucked, eat Arby's, and like all of a sudden it had like grabbed the zeitgeist, and and it was like, whoa, man, I really wish anything I cared about had taken hold as hard as this bullshit joke has.
Yeah, isn't it funny how that stuff is always the stuff that really takes off? Like the thing that you just kind of do as a goof.
Dude, you have no idea how relevant that is today. Because, well, here, I'll finish this fucking little quick tale because, but that is very relevant specifically today. And so then it turns out that like the chief operating officer at The Onion, his daughters were friends with my daughter in the same class at grade school. And one day, like I'd just been laid off from The Onion when they got bought by the, private investor group or whatever. And
sure.
They kind of like stripped the whole thing. Oh, nope. That's the end of me working at The Onion. Sorry. I had been laid off from the ad agency because of Nihilist Arby's. Never mind. Okay.
So Nihilist Arby's got you fired?
Nah, officially no. According to all professional accounts, no. But they did not like it there.
Right.
After like it started like popping up in like Ad Age and Ad Week and stuff like that, and I was like, do you really not like that you've got a copywriter on your staff that's got like a 5-page spread in Ad Week, which is like the publication for this industry, and they literally called me a genius in the headline. I would like to note just here on the podcast that I do not consider myself to be any sort of genius, but they called me that, and advertising is all about idiotic, overblown statements. So I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And they were, and they were so mad. And then like they waited about a month and a half till it was like plausibly deniable to do it. And then I was just like, oh.
Gotcha.
But so then this dude on the playground, I'm dropping off my daughter, and he's like, hey, you're Nihilist Arby's. You want to go to the Onion? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. He's like, yeah, come down and see The Office. And I come down and see The Office. And then, like, the next day, he's like, oh, you're in some kind of fucking band or something? Damn, I thought I would impress you by bringing you into the office. You've been in that office a bunch of times. I'm like, no, it's cool. I don't know what you're doing, but yeah, that's fine.
Right.
And then I just like did like one quick interview, and then I worked there. It was great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's this one again silly thing that creates this whole kind of tumble down of different things. And did I see that you that you worked with that website Hard Times also?
Yeah, no, I'm still doing stuff with them.
Oh yeah, cool.
Well, yeah, I mean it's like on a real like sort of freelance basis. It's like there's a private writers group pitch page, and so every once in a while I'll just go on there and pitch some stuff, and every once in a while I'll write an article. It's fun.
Excellent. That's very cool. I've written one joke that I think, because the thing I love about it is like I would do when I was like whenever I do like music jokes in my act, I can never get it to go over in like a comedy club, but like the like weird alternative scene will usually get it. Like I had a joke about pop punk being the blues for people with no real problems, but I've gotten one headline that I think is a genius Hard Times headline where I just put an American football album cover on Zillow, and that's like a cool real estate agent's Midwest real estate agent's site.
Yep. Well, I will tell you that the editors at Hard Times do not like any articles that rely on pictures fundamentally to convey the joke.
Oh, so it's all for the headline. The Joe Biden Midwest emo jazz master article was genius. I felt like that article might have been written specifically for me and like 4 of my friends.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a really fun thing, and especially to go into that writer's room and see like all these like really, really, really funny people just like cranking out shit is like pretty hilarious. And yeah, it's just a great, I don't know, like comedy writing remotely is really fun and easy, and it's just like funny. You just like go on your computer and you laugh at a bunch of shit. I think comedy writing in a room is like cutthroat and brutal, and you either like kill or be killed, and I don't really have that sensibility. I mean, like, not that I really had a problem. I mean, you don't write like that in like the part of the Onion that I worked in, but
I know what you're talking about though. I heard on This American Life once it was like someone like recorded like a pitch session for the Onion, and trying to make other comedians or comedy writers laugh is brutal. Like if you get like a ha ha ha, that's a crusher bit. It's insane.
Oh, I mean, I watched Clickhole do like they all pitched, and it was like the editor-in-chief of Clickhole would read all the headlines like anonymous, right? So like, so nobody would be like, well, I hate Katie, so I'm not laughing at that shit, right? And so read them all, and then they would sit around and like just kind of fidget. And I was like, the fuck is going on? He's like, okay, so now we're down to 20 headlines. And I'm like, what the fuck's happening? Because I was just sitting in from like my department, like over there, and then they read through them again, and it's like, okay, so everybody knows their assignments, and I'm like, literally, what the fuck is going on? I didn't see anything get rejected or accepted or anybody assign anything, and it was like all this like silent auction shit where somebody would just like put their hand on their nose or like rub the side of their head or whatever, and it was like just to like express interest without laughing. I guess I don't know. It was really weird. I mean, like, comedy is a dark, fucked up bubble. And you know, like the few times I've done it, it's like I go out on stage and like half the solo shows I do are more comedy shows than fucking music shows. But I've done a few like stand-up sets, but it's just all been completely improvisational, and it pisses people off when I kill.
Yeah,
I have nothing, you know, and it's like, but it's weird. It's like I thought music was kind of like, oh, you know, I fucking hate AFI. I don't believe that they're killing it right now, or whatever your thing is. It's got nothing to do with like this jack off I've never heard of. His jokes about pasta aren't as good as my jokes about pasta that I've never fucking heard. You know, like it's just like, well,
dude, there is so many similarities in our two worlds, man. It is bizarre. And the other thing, like you'll see, like, you know, like someone will write a post like, oh, I'm gonna be on Conan tonight, and then someone will share that, be like, oh, my best friend is gonna be on Conan tonight, and it's like, you know that those two people have never talked to each other. Like, it's just this,
right?
Like, it's this weird,
yeah.
It's this weird. Sometimes like comedy scenes like and I love the New York City comedy scene, but there can sometimes be these times and pockets that create this like fucked up like what's the name of that book, like the book where like all the kids basically have to fight for themselves on the island. I'm totally
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. Yes, thank you. It's kind of like that, and you're just kind of like hoping like, oh, maybe I'll get something. I'll just throw all this stuff at the wall, and maybe something will pull me out of having to do open mics in front of other comics looking at their phones the whole time.
Right. No, totally. And it is brutal. I mean, it's such a like harsh individualism. Like, you know, like it's funny. This is fucked up, and it's like, it's not that fucked up. I got a friend. He had a like good job. He's older than me. He had a good job, like at a big corporation in like a pretty like executive like financial position, and he quit because he couldn't take it anymore. And he was like, "Yep, I'm gonna do music." And I was like, "That's interesting." I'm like, you're 47 years old. You play acoustic guitar. You have no fans. You've never really done music in like much of a public space, except for like kind of like battle of the bands type of shit. I would say it's maybe not a good idea. You do also have a wife and kids that you're like sort of the breadwinner for. Like, you know, maybe not the best idea. And he's like, no, tell you what, come with me to this spot where I'm going to play this open mic. And I was like, oh, dude. So I go with him to this spot where he plays an open mic. Mm-hmm. And he's pretty good. Okay? Like, do I think he's ever going to, like, feed his family based on his songs? No, I don't. But he's not, like, a totally shitty musician.
Right.
But there's this dude who's, like, running the soundboard or whatever. He's got this shirt, and it says something along the lines of, like, I may look like I'm listening to you, but I'm just thinking about my guitar. And it's got a picture of a guitar, right? And so I see the dude. And so I'm friendly with the dude that does, like, Meth Syndicate and Facebook T-shirts and all that stuff, which is, like, Instagram accounts that have, like, these, like, ridiculously dumb shirts on them. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I decided I want to take a picture to send to this dude. So I'm like, yo, can I take a picture of your shirt? It's dope. And the guy's like, sure, man. You play guitar? I was like, yeah, I play guitar a little bit. And he was like, you ever done an open mic? And I was like, honestly, no, I've never done an open mic. And he's like, you should come back next week. And I was like, okay, I will. And so like I went back to the open mic specifically to like sort of like show this dude like the difference between like just like deciding you're gonna have a career in music and then like doing it for 30 years.
Uh-huh.
And then I felt immediately terrible about the whole thing. Because I played and then the guy after me was like, holy cow, I would listen to you like for real on a record. Whoever that guy was, like, you know, you should really dedicate more time to this. And I'm like, oh God, I'm like, this is so fucking lame of me to do this. You know, 'cause it's not like stand up where like, you know, you drop it like you're fucking Chris Rock and you drop into the Comedy Cellar because you have new shit to do.
You can still bomb.
You don't know if it's going to go over well, you know, like, it's like, I know my songs.
Yeah.
You know, like I know if they work or not. And it was I don't know. Let the gods decide, man. I thought it was kind of maybe a lame thing, but it was also pretty funny, and it was also very vindicating. I
imagine so. I wish I could have been there because I would have been in the back like trying not to laugh, just like.
Oh, I mean, the dude, like, I mean, the guy was like, "No, I'm serious. That's like that is the best open mic performance I have ever seen." I was like, "No, stop." I'm like, "You gotta stop."
Do you remember what song you were playing?
I played like 4 songs.
Uh-huh.
You know, and it was just like, I played like, just like the A minor bass Lawrence Arm songs, like I played Ramblin' Revisited by the Wandering Birds, which is like kind of like the best song I ever wrote. I mean, I kind of broke out the big guns.
Yeah,
like
just bring out the howitzer.
In there
Yeah.
And not kill.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's like when Jerry Seinfeld goes in to his friend who's like won't laugh, who's in the hospital and like does his act.
And then he dies. I remember that episode. Well, this whole story kind of also reminds me of like the episode of Friends where it's when Monica's a professional chef. She goes into a cooking class because someone said she couldn't cook, and she goes into a cooking class to like just be like, "Oh, Monica, you're doing so good."
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, but the whole thing was, it started out of a fucking place of love or whatever, but you know.
Yeah. Well, given the current state of the world, I would love to tell some jokes in front of comics watching looking at their phones right now. You know, you really have a perspective on what you miss. Something else I wanted to ask you, because as I was going back and researching like the Lawrence Arms songs, I feel like Someday We'll All Weigh 400 pounds. I feel like in 1999 you kind of saw where we were going to be now. I'm curious, and I've talked to a lot of musicians about like what touring is going to look like after the pandemic, and I'm curious what you think like a possible solution is, because I part of me thinks I'm going to be doing like big tent revival comedy shows for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be any way to pack a bunch of people into a thing anytime soon, regardless of whether this Dolly Parton vaccine works out or not.
Yeah, I know, but
because
I love that she's the savior of humanity.
She's always been the savior of humanity. I mean, it started out with her having huge, beautiful boobs and like teasing up her hair and dressing in rhinestones and being like, I always wanted to be trash. And it's like, oh my God, you're a real human being. I love you. I'm, 6 and I'm in love with you. And then she's got the beautiful voice and she like kind of saved Appalachia. And then, yeah, now she's going to just go ahead and save humanity. It's great. You can always look to Dolly, I think. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be pretty hard to get people to come together until it's not. Like there will be one like Trapped show or some shit like that. Like somebody that's like really on the wrong side of history post vaccine,
Yeah.
and it'll be like no noticeable spike, and then boom, shit's back. However, where's it going to go? All the clubs are going to be closed down. All the bands are going to be out of business. And I mean, like, all the stand-ups are going to be like selling insurance and shit like that, right? So I think the question that I don't know if you even knew you were asking is, how is this going to look in a more like practical municipal sense? What's going to happen is like Chicago's divided into wards. Each ward has an alderman, right?
Right.
The alderman is sort of responsible for like the sort of physical health of the ward in a very real way, because they're the leader of it, right? And I bet this couldn't be more interesting to listen to. But
I'm very into this, because I am kind of asking what you said.
But so let's say you are the alderman of a ward where there's a huge entertainment strip, right? Because there's never like more than like one strip, right? So you've got like, let's say you've got like 5 clubs like right here in a zone, and they all close down, and they all used to bring in a lot of revenue, a lot of tax revenue, a lot of commercial revenue from people going there and also dining out elsewhere. And now they're all gone. Now they're dead. So there's nobody coming into your zone. There's no money coming into your zone. And people are looking at you being like, what the fuck? And in Chicago, for example, you can't get like a new liquor license. You can only buy a liquor license that exists, right? There is like a what's called a PPP license, which is like if you have live entertainment, you can also have a bar as long as you have food. There's like all sorts of shit like that, and I'm not savvy enough to really know if even what I just said is right in terms of the acronym, but or PPE anyway. What's going to happen is that alderman is going to find themselves on the verge of like really having to face up to the fact that it's like a cash negative black hole in their city. And somebody's going to come up and be like, yo, I want to open a liquor store or a bar in this mattress store. And they're going to be like, okay, you could do that. I want to open a comedy club up in this fucking former subway station that's no longer a fucking subway station, or this former Subway restaurant that's no longer a Subway restaurant. They're going to be like, okay, because there is no way to move forward. And these people are greedy as shit. They need money to thrive. They need money to get their fucking keep their jobs. And it's like, as every like forest fire burns a forest to the ground, it nurtures the ground and creates like fucking striplings that come up, right? And that is the future. You're going to see like this like Manhattan 1989 situation where it's like, this used to be a McDonald's, now it's a bar, kind of situation. And I think that is the future, because I just don't think that the people in power have the choice. And like if you're the kind of person that listens to like the doomsayers of Rome or whatever, it's like you need to give your people bread and circuses or they will come kill you. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to be doing comedy in a goddamn Burger King someday soon, but it won't be a Burger King. It'll be called like Chuckle Kings or some shit like that.
Yeah, it'll pay homage to. It's almost like a reverse of what's been happening in New York now that like fucking CBGB's is like a John Varvatos.
It's the exact opposite, but it will also happen again there. Manhattan is such a closed capsule that maybe not, but like, and I guess Brooklyn, for all of its like gentrification and fucking streamlining, is also still like really spaced out. There's still a lot of there's not a lot of localization anywhere in Brooklyn, right? Like there's this cool bar, then it's like 9 million foot warehouse, and then it's like that's the bodega that you can go to. You know, I don't feel like I walk around Brooklyn and go like, ooh, I'm in the middle of like a thriving little zone.
Well, Brooklyn has like, you have like your cool neighborhood, but then you go the next block over and it's like it's like it's like needles and armed robbery.
But like in Brooklyn, from my experience, and like I don't fucking live over there, but it's like, oh wow, there's 9 places I can get like 6 different kinds of Benedicts right here. But if I wanted like a fucking can of Pepsi and a fucking
right,
pack of cigarettes or something, like what? Oh, that's 2 miles that way. It's like culturally centralized, like not without. I don't know. It's like you go to a place where there's like 4 bodegas, and then you move like 3 miles down the way, and there's like 9 juice bars.
Yep,
like,
that sounds about right. It's kind of done in like strange sections. I'll have to say, I feel like your take is much more optimistic than some of the rock people I've talked to. I guess maybe it's a different place or a different point of view, but this actually sounds kind of exciting for when in a post-vaccine era. I'm imagining this could be an exciting time.
Yeah, I think that here's the thing, man. And my kids are also going to come home soon, so I'm going to have to like.
Oh yeah, no, it's good. Just we can
snip. But the thing is, you have to be excited about it. Like that's what humanity does. That's what that's what the people who aren't like banging the fucking cowbell on the street with the sandwich board on them do, is they look to what the positive possibilities are, and they hope for those and they work for those, and we can do that, and it will come back. And even though like what I'm saying is a result that's obviously motivated by the avarice of municipal warlords who need to save their own bottom line or whatever. The truth is, fuck it. Who cares? If it gets fucking cool bars back in my neighborhood after all the cool bars in my neighborhood closed down, woo, and I've seen towns die. My mom used to live in Port Arthur, Texas. That town was already dead by the time she got there.
Right.
And like, just all the money left.
Mm-hmm.
All the money hasn't left New York. All the money hasn't left Chicago. It might not be your money or my money, but there's money here. There's infrastructure here. Mm-hmm. There are buildings that you can set up like 6 bottles of fucking flavored Svedka behind the counter of, and there's buildings that you can like build a 2-foot fucking stage. There's bowling alleys where you can make the next like fucking great punk rock movement happen. Like it's possible, and you just have to believe and hope, and if they don't do it, then we fucking step up and do it. That's it.
Fuck yeah, dude. I feel like that's a really beautiful way to go out here, dude. I sincerely appreciate you taking time to talk to me, Brendan. And I'll be right there with you. You might get an email from me. It's like, okay, I've got a former laundromat that is now part fight club, part music venue.
Perfect. Yeah. No, I'm into it, man.
Awesome, man.
I'm into it.
Is there anything we can plug before we get out here, dude?
Yeah, man. So today,
you can message me. I can put it on.
No. These girls are cool. So today, a record came out. It's for the water company Liquid Death,
mm-hmm.
and it's called Greatest Hates Volume 2, and it's me, Chris number 2, Jen from the Bomb Pops, Josh from the Bomb Pops, with special guests Tim McGrath, Dan Andriano, Joe Principe, from Rise Against, Alkaline Trio, Rise Against, respectively. And gosh, now I'm like blanking on the names of the people who I don't actually personally know, but a woman, the woman from Pink Shift, and the horn player from We Are the Union also joined us on this, and it just launched on all different platforms. And if you recall, I said early on, I wish anything I cared about got as much juice as this joke. This is doomed to be extreme. It turned out so good, and it's really, really fun. It's like 15 or 16 songs in like 18 minutes. It's really fun, and it's called Greatest Hates Volume 2, and I'm really proud of it, and I hope I don't have to tell you about this because you'll have heard it by the time this comes out anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go listen to it now. But that sounds really cool. And dude, I will next time Lawrence Arms swing through New York. I'll be in the crowd, man. And thank you so much again, Brandon. I really appreciate it, dude. I'll let you get back to your family. Thank you so much.
Great talk, man.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.
You too. My takeaway from that is that even if things go away, they are reformed into something different, which is, I think, a beautifully optimistic outlook. And as I said earlier, not one I was expecting from Brendan Kelly, from the guy who also runs at Nihilist Arby's. But that was, again, I feel like my mind has expanded a little bit based off of that conversation. So thank you, Brendan, for your time and candor. I sincerely appreciate it. And guys, if you haven't listened to the Lawrence Arms' newest album, Skeleton Coast, it is available wherever you get your music. It's spectacular, and you can also check out the Liquid Death project that Brendan was mentioning. I want to thank you guys for being here. That's our show for today. If you enjoyed this and think you know a friend who might be into this, interested in this podcast, you guys are the biggest advocates for me as far as telling other people that this podcast is cool. So thank you. We are available on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, and Amazon Music, and everywhere else you get your podcasts. I also want to give a shout out to my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Mooney. Thank you so much for your support. I sincerely appreciate it. If you guys are curious, you can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster. Check out the stuff I've got going on over there. And thanks for being here with me, guys. And I feel I can see the light towards better days. And if you need an assist, I'd say start watching The Muppet Christmas Carol now. So thank you guys for being here, and I will see you next time between Awesome and Disaster. Stay safe and wear a mask.